9. Liam Mitatas. Liam Mitatas wanted some quick money, and apparently he wanted it badly enough to kill his friend, Sarah Stern. He hoped he could cash in on her $25,000 savings. He committed the horrific crime back in late 2016, with plans to make the murder look like an accident. Mitatas broke into Sarah's New Jersey home and strangled her, causing her to have a seizure. Then he stuffed a shirt down her throat while holding her nose shut. He left Sarah's car on a bridge with the keys still in the ignition. Police searched Shark River for Sarah's body but never found it. Mitatas told them that she had been talking about wanting to leave her life behind and flee to Canada. He also claimed that she had threatened to commit suicide, citing the young woman's strained relationship with her father. The truth came to light 2 months later when police finally had enough evidence to charge Mitatas with murder. Authorities obtained recordings showing that Mitatas plotted the murder over a 6-month period. The damning tapes featured Mitatas talking about how Sarah had found $25,000 cash inside her family's vacation home, and how she had used some of the money for vacations and surgery for her dog. By the time the killer got his hands on it, there was only $10,000 left. The bills were reportedly in such terrible condition he wasn't even sure if they were usable. Mitatas claimed that the recordings were part of an audition to appear in a horror movie, but the judge wasn't buying it. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and an accomplice received an 18-year sentence. 8. An inheritance to die for. In October of last year, Irish father and son team Ty and Diamond O'Sullivan shot Diamond's brother Mark. Then they turned their guns on themselves and took their own lives. The tragedy began in early 2020 when Diamond and Mark's mother, Anne, received a terminal cancer diagnosis. She planned to split her sprawling farm between her 2 sons. Anne's husband, Ty, and her younger son, Diamond, were enraged by this. They felt that Diamond deserved to inherit most or all of the farm because he worked on it. In the meantime, Mark told friends that he feared for his life. He genuinely believed that his brother and father might actually kill him, and for good reason. Diamond had made more than a few threatening remarks. Mark even went so far as saying that he thought the pair would murder him and make it look like a suicide. And he was at least partially right. One day, Ty and Diamond entered Mark's room and opened fire. Anne fled on foot towards a neighbor's in an attempt to get help for her slain son. By the time police arrived, the murderous pair had shot themselves. They left notes in their pockets indicating that the violence was planned well in advance. Anne, who believed that the pair killed Mark to make her suffer, died 6 months after the triple tragedy. 7. Rich in money, poor in friends. Luis Carlos de Noronha Cabral de Camara was a wealthy Portuguese loner who knew better than almost anybody else that money can't buy happiness. He was the illegitimate son of an aristocrat who never had his own children and very few friends. While drawing up his will in 1988, the miserable multimillionaire was faced with the question of who to leave his fortune to. At a perceived lack for other options, he bequeathed his funds to 70 random people from the Lisbon phone directory. When Luis Carlos drank himself to death in 2007, his unsuspecting heirs began receiving phone calls from lawyers about their money. At first, they thought they were being scammed, but as they soon learned, it was the real deal. Much of the man's fortune went to the bottle, so he didn't leave behind as much as one might expect. But each person received thousands of dollars, not a bad deal for having never known the guy. It came as good news to the heirs, but was part of a very sad story about a lonely man who had something that most people want, money, and wanted something that most people have, friendship, companionship, or some other type of human bond. But there was apparently more to the story. Anibal Castro, one of Luis Carlos's only friends, told The Guardian that the eccentric loner was determined to leave nothing to the state. He felt robbed by the government and wanted to create confusion by leaving his money to strangers. 6. A Pampered Pooch. American businesswoman Leona Helmsley was notorious for her ruthless and cutthroat demeanor. Nicknamed the Queen of Mean, the tyrannical woman became best known for saying, "We don't pay taxes. Only the little people pay taxes." She inherited over $5 billion following the death of her second husband, real estate tycoon Harry Helmsley. By then, she'd already been convicted of federal income tax evasion and had done prison time. Helmsley reportedly became a recluse in her later years and was estranged from much of her family. She also had very few friends and died in 2007 after spending years in relative isolation at her penthouse home. With such a limited circle, she chose to leave a large portion of her fortune to her Maltese dog, Trouble. You may wonder what exactly a dog could possibly do with $12 million. A lot of people ask the same question, including a judge who ruled that Helmsley was mentally unfit when she drew up her will and reduced Trouble's inheritance to $2 million to be used for the dog's care. Trouble's caretaker received $60,000 per year. Meanwhile, $100,000 went to full-time security every year, and thousands more went towards grooming and food. After Trouble died in 2010, the remainder of the money was put back into Helmsley's estate. Helmsley's decision to leave so much money to her dog earned her the number 3 place on Fortune magazine's 101 Dumbest Moments in Business in 2007. She left nothing to 2 of her 4 grandkids, but they ended up receiving $25 million each in 2019 as part of a settlement granted to the executors of Helmsley's will. The family issues have been kept quiet as part of a court agreement, and much of the Helmsley's fortune ended up going to charity. 5. A Marital Mistake. A deceased Indiana woman's will made headlines recently for some interesting stipulations that prevented her son from cashing in on his trust fund. After the woman died in 2015, her son found that the fine print banned him from collecting his inheritance outright if he was still married to his third wife, which he was. According to the terms, he could still receive the money, but it would go into a sub-trust controlled by his sister. The son challenged the legality of the trust, and the Indiana Court of Appeals ruled that the conditions posed an illegal restraint on his marriage. But the matter proceeded to the state Supreme Court, which reversed the decision, arguing that there are no laws stating that a trust can't be based on marriage conditions. The judge agreed with the ruling, according to local news station WLFI, but he also pointed out that the case was a good example of why the state's trust code needs to be tightened. In what he described as a Pandora's box of unintended and harmful consequence, Justice Christopher Goff explained that under the current law, a person could require their heirs to marry someone based on demographics like race, or to do illegal things like refuse to pay property taxes. 4. A Burdensome Bill. The Samsungs are South Korea's richest family, and South Korea has one of the world's highest inheritance taxes. So naturally, having big money comes with big bills if you live there. The first family of Korean-made electronics found this out the hard way last year when they were slapped with a $10.8 billion tax bill following the death of the company's chairman, Lee Kun-hee. To make matters even more stressful, Lee Kun-hee was very private about how he wanted his financial affairs handled after he died. So it may have come as a surprise to learn that his only son, Lee Jae-yong, could tighten his control over the company by inheriting his father's shares in Samsung subsidiaries. But he'd have to come up with a way to pay the massive tax bill, which is more than half the value of Lee's estate and over 3 times the total inheritance taxes the country collected last year, according to the New York Times. It appears as though the family is still trying to sort out how to split up the estate. They announced that they'll donate Lee's art collection, which consists of some 23,000 pieces and is worth roughly $2.2 billion. It includes extremely valuable works by artists like Picasso and Monet. The Samsungs will also donate $900 million towards fighting infectious diseases, rare diseases, and childhood cancer. These generous moves come on the heels of some bad publicity for the family, including Lee Jae-yong's recent imprisonment for bribery. And although the Samsungs have reassured the public that they plan to pay the inheritance tax in full, they've been accused of breaking tax laws in the past. Their predicament truly gives meaning to the idea of having so much money you don't know what to do with it all, even when you have to get rid of a bunch of it. 3. Avoidable hardship. Kathy Boone died homeless last year at age 49 while at a warming shelter in Astoria, Oregon. Little did she know she was due to inherit nearly $900,000 following her mother's death in 2016. Unfortunately, by then, Kathy was lost to the streets, and nobody was able to find her and deliver the news. A lawyer for the estate had tried to track her down through social media and through family members, and had even hired a private investigator and placed newspaper ads in his attempts to locate Kathy. But Kathy remained elusive while struggling with addiction and mental health issues. She had relapsed after her mother died unexpectedly at age 68, and nobody caught her on time to let her know that she had some money coming her way. It made no sense to Kathy's father, who told local news outlet KGW that the money was just sitting there and she needed help in the worst way. He also conceded that his daughter had had a rough life, but when she was good, she was really good. The year before Kathy's untimely death, a judge ruled for the $884,000 inheritance to be transferred to the Department of State Lands, which is where unclaimed money and property go. At last update, the estate was working to see if Kathy's 2 children have any rights to the funds. 2. A forfeited fortune. Juan Carlos I was King of Spain from 1975 until 2014, when he abdicated the throne over an embezzlement scandal and numerous other ethical quandaries, including an elephant hunting trip to Botswana. Ever since, his reputation has been shrouded in controversy. In a move to distance himself from the disgraced royal family member, the former monarch's son, King Felipe VI, announced in 2020 that he had stripped his father of his palace allowance. Felipe also relinquished his due inheritance. His decisions made a powerful statement, since most people aren't quick to turn away a fortune. But Felipe wanted to make it clear that he's not like his father, and this was the most compelling way to do it. He made these announcements amid an ongoing investigation by Swiss authorities into Juan Carlos I's shady financial dealings. Meanwhile, the Spanish Parliament decided against launching an investigation. Allegations against the former king date at least as far back as 2008, when rumors swirled about him receiving $100 million via an offshore account from Saudi Arabia's late King Abdullah. Prosecutors believe that the money constituted kickback payments and suspected Carlos of money laundering. Felipe was listed as a beneficiary of the fund, but he denied any knowledge of this. His decision to back out of his expected fortune was a fantastic PR move. While Felipe stands to lose quite a bit of money, he gained the support of Spain's political parties and was recognized for his exemplary public service. 1. Disinherited but unashamed. In 2020, British actress Elizabeth Hurley's former lover, Steve Bing, tragically committed suicide. The billionaire businessman had just started getting to know his son, Damien Hurley, weeks before his death. Bing showed all the signs of a man who wanted to right his wrongs. In addition to calling Damien for the first time on his 18th birthday, Bing had recently won a court battle against his own father, who was trying to exclude Bing's children from the family trust funds. Sadly, Bing's father failed to respect his son's final wishes. He appealed the court ruling and came out on top, with a new decision dictating that Steve's 2 children wouldn't receive a penny, all because they were born out of wedlock. Instead, the money will go to the children of Bing's sister Mary, whose parents were married when they were born. Damien and his half-sister Kira lost out on what could have been a $250 million fortune, but they are also confronted with the emotional scars of being excluded by their own flesh and blood. Liz Hurley said little throughout most of the ordeal. She finally broke her silence to the Daily Mail, stating that Bing wanted his children to be financially taken care of and believed that they would be. Bing had refused to acknowledge his 2 children publicly for much of their lives, and he even purposely excluded them from his will at first, but he had a change of heart before he died. Hurley teamed up with Lisa Kerkorian, the mother of Steve's daughter, in their fight for their children's inheritance, but their pleas fell on deaf ears, and Bing's father was granted the right to distribute the money as he wished. Although there's nothing they can do about it now, the women continue to make it clear that this is not what Steve wanted.
Number 10. Call of Duty Rivals. A Brazilian esports player who specialized in Call of Duty was brutally murdered inside her home by a rival player. According to ESPN Brazil, as well as reports from the police, Oliveira Bueno da Silva, known by her online alias as Sol, was butchered by a guy named Guilherme Alves Costa. His online alias was Flashlight. Well, Flashlight broke into Oliveira's house and stabbed her to death. It all started several weeks before the murder. The 2 players met online, fighting on opposing teams. Guilherme allegedly invited Oliveira to his home as part of a joint competition. That was the first time they made contact in real life. 2 weeks after they met in person, something snapped in Guilherme's brain. He began to plot exactly how he would massacre his rival. And while sure, lots of people get upset with the people they're playing games with, Guilherme took it to a whole new level of crazy. He actually went through with his murder plot. After he went to her house and stabbed her with a knife, he then posted a video of the woman's body on WhatsApp. In the video, the murderer can even be heard laughing. When questioned by the police as to his motive, Guilherme basically said that he was bored in life. He didn't have any goals, and he didn't like being bested by a female player. He was wildly unstable, surrendering voluntarily to the police just 30 minutes after the slaying. He's now being charged with femicide, a kind of hate crime murder. Number 9. Skyrim Killer. Jin Kid is famous for doing impressions on TikTok and making Skyrim videos. He's also now famous for murdering his wife and her friend. Jin Kid is really named Ali Nasser Abulaban. At the time of his arrest, he had over 1 million followers on TikTok. He's now sitting in a cell, waiting for his preliminary hearing that will take place in January of 2022. According to NBC, the police discovered the bodies of Anna Abdulaban and Rayburn Barron in an apartment in San Diego's East Village. Anna was Jin Kid's husband, and she had been shot once in the forehead. A single bullet to the brain was enough to kill her. But Anna's friend Rayburn was discovered with 3 bullets in the head and neck. Why kill his wife? She was having a romantic relationship with her friend and was planning to end her marriage to the TikTok star. She had even gone so far as to kick him out of the home. But as a professional gamer, he wasn't about to just be dumped like a chump. He went back to the apartment, vandalized it, and installed an application on his daughter's phone that would allow him to listen to what was happening in the apartment. He returned to the hotel he was staying at, activated the app, and heard his wife and her new boyfriend laughing at him. At that point, it didn't matter how many followers he had, or how rich he'd become from playing Skyrim. He raced back to the apartment and killed both of them. Number 8. Bad Brooklyn Baby. In Brooklyn, a mother's boyfriend has been charged with killing her baby just because the baby interrupted his gaming session. His name is Ricardo Price, 23. He's facing homicide charges for the death of Royalty Kemp. She was only 4 months old. According to what the mother told police, Price got so angry when the baby cried that he abused it. As he was trying to play games, the baby would scream. Annoyed by all the noise, he would beat her in the head with his game controller. He even picked the baby up and threw her at the wall of the apartment in anger. There really is no silver lining to this horrific series of events. The mother had met Ricardo Price on a dating app the year before and had allowed him to move in with her. But clearly, it wasn't a very good idea. He was disturbingly obsessed with games and would rage anytime she or her baby interrupted him. And finally, his last outburst proved to be deadly. The child was taken to Woodhull Hospital, then transferred to the Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan. The doctors said Royalty suffered a brain injury, a fractured skull, and internal bleeding. There was nothing they could do to save her, and she died on July 1st. The day after the baby was brought to Bellevue was when the police finally got involved. Believe it or not, the mother never even went to the police following the incident. It was the hospital who had to call the cops, who thankfully arrested Ricardo Price and locked him up. Number 7. Console Wars. In Aurora, Colorado, a gamer was murdered in the parking lot of a McDonald's restaurant while trying to sell a gaming console. According to Matt Longshore with the Aurora Police Department, Andy Billinger was shot at 6:30 p.m. by a person who he had met on the internet. They previously agreed to meet in the McDonald's parking lot to hand over the piece of gaming equipment. The guy who did the shooting wanted to get his hands on the gaming console so bad that he set up a premeditated murder. The second that Andy pulled out the console, he was shot dead. The shooter grabbed the console and he left Andy in the parking lot to bleed to death. Andy's longtime girlfriend said that he sold all kinds of items online to help support his mother. Times were tough, so he decided to sell his treasured console. But unfortunately for him, he picked the wrong buyer. But here's where things get really wild. Last we heard, the police were still searching for the man responsible for the murder. Even though the shooter had set up the sale online, something you would assume could easily lead the police back to him, they have still been unable to track the crazed gamer down or identify him. What's your worst experience trying to sell something online? Let us know all about it in the comments. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. An online friend. Breck Bednar was an English teenager from Surrey who was murdered in 2014. Breck was a student at the St. Bede School in Red Hill. He was a member of the Air Training Corps, and he frequently attended St. John the Evangelist Church. In other words, he was a perfectly ordinary guy and a positive member of his community. He also really enjoyed playing video games after school. He was passionate about gaming, like so many young people are these days. But here's where things get dark. Breck's mother had started to limit his access to his electronics. His personality was changing, she said. He was starting to refuse to go to church. He was obsessed with video games, and he never wanted to leave the house. The perfectly ordinary boy began going a little crazy. It all had something to do with somebody he was playing games online with for a few months. This individual was named Lewis Daines, 18 years old. Breck's parents even called the police to report that their son was in danger because of Daines' bad influence. But naturally, the police couldn't do much about a random online persona. On February 17, 2014, approximately 2 months after Breck's parents complained to the police, the two gamers met for the first time in real life. Breck traveled to Lewis's house in a taxi. Several hours later, photos of his dead body appeared on social media. As it turns out, Lewis was a reclusive, crazy person. He had Asperger's syndrome. He had been living alone ever since he was 16 in an apartment that his grandparents owned, and he was mentally ill. He had been plotting Breck's murder for weeks. When Breck finally arrived at his house, he butchered him in what was described as an extremely cruel and unusual manner. He then uploaded photos of the dead body online and waited for the police to come and arrest him. After the murder, he got life in prison. Number 5. In-game currency. A 17-year-old boy in Nepal borrowed some money from his friend to purchase some additional features in a mobile game he was playing. Anyone who's ever played a mobile game will know just how horribly addicting they are. Candy Crush, for example. Have you ever played it? Well, this kid was way in over his head. He just couldn't stop. The news never did say what game he was playing, but it was important enough that he poured all his money into it. When the friend whom he'd borrowed money off came looking to get paid back, that's when things turned ugly. The friend realized that the gamer was not planning to pay him back. He proved incapable of spending money on anything other than this game. On March 10th, Javan Kunte tried to get his friend drunk before asking for his money back. He thought maybe if the gamer was wasted, he would finally hand over the cash. But getting him drunk didn't work and only made things worse. The two got into an argument, and Javan Kunte slit the victim's throat. He could have just paid the money back instead of pouring it all into his game, but instead, he ended up dead, and his friend wound up in jail for murder. Number 4. Meth and PUBG. Yet another gamer broke down and started shooting people, this time on the other side of the world. A gamer in the city of Lahore, Pakistan, opened fire on his family when they tried to do an intervention on him. The intervention was half about video games and half about crystal meth. According to the local reports, the young gamer was terribly addicted to both PUBG and ice. He spent all his time doing methamphetamine and playing his game. His family was understandably distressed. He had gotten divorced from his wife. His life was spiraling down the drain, and all he cared about was his video game and his drugs. When his family tried to sit him down and talk things through, he wasn't having any of it. He freaked out and opened fire at all the family members who had gone into his house. He shot his brother, his sister, a random person who had just been walking by, and his sister-in-law. The only one who didn't die from the gunshot wounds was the victim's mother, though she was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Lahore police arrested the crazed murderer, who'd likely only killed his family because he was hopped up on dope and irritated that they were preventing him from playing his game. It was a quadruple murder, and sadly for the addict, there probably won't be any PUBG in jail. Number 3. Losing the tournament. A rival between a couple of video game enthusiasts in Florida ended in death. Eli Clayton, 21, and Taylor Robertson, 27, were local experts on Madden NFL. According to the police, David Katz from Baltimore shot both these men dead in a brutal attack outside the Jacksonville Landing shopping and entertainment complex. The three men had been playing in the same esports tournament, but after losing a match, David Katz proved to be a sore loser. He became so furious that he pulled out a weapon and started shooting. Eli had played football in high school and was a new rising star in the esports community. Taylor was also a wildly successful esports player. He even won the Madden 17 Classic a few years ago. Their deaths came as a complete shock to everyone, but they weren't the only victims of the attack. When David Katz freaked out and started shooting, he managed to hit 13 other people. He started spraying into the crowd of spectators who had been watching the tournament. At least 11 were seriously wounded, while 2 others suffered minor injuries as they scrambled to run away. By the time the police arrived on scene, David Katz was already dead. Number 2. Subhuman. A man recently killed 4 people in Canada. These people were his family, his entire family. After he brutally massacred them, he went online and told his gaming friends that he slaughtered his loved ones because he didn't want them to know that he was a subhuman. Menhaz Zaman described himself as pathetic because of his addiction to video games. He also told his online gaming friends that for the past 3 years, he had been lying to his parents that he was studying in university. But in reality, he was hanging out at the mall 4 days a week and spending his time playing games. Amazingly, it was actually the people on Discord who rang the police and told him what happened. His friends on Discord asked for proof of what the man had done, and so Menhaz Zaman uploaded photos of the 4 dead people still sitting in his house. The guys on Discord quickly alerted the authorities, who later on made a rather unfortunate house call. They found Menhaz's parents, his sister, and his grandmother all dead. And all because he didn't want them to know that he was a lying gaming nerd. Number 1. The wrong address. A gamer who couldn't get enough Call of Duty has been sentenced to prison for a hoax gone terribly wrong. Casey Viner from Ohio pleaded guilty in court to making false phone calls to the Wichita police back in 2017. His false phone calls convinced officers to believe they were dealing with a person who had just shot and killed their own father. Why in the world would Casey do this? It all goes back to video games. Casey wanted the police to go to the home of another gamer called Shane Gaskill. Shane was his arch nemesis. The pair had gotten into an argument after Shane killed Casey's character in the game. Casey was so mad that he wanted the police to go to Shane's house and open fire on him. Shane gave Casey an address. It just wasn't for his own house. The address was for Andrew Finch, a completely unrelated person who had nothing to do with anything. When the police arrived at Andrew's house, believing they were dealing with a person who had just shot and killed their father, the confusion resulted in Andrew being gunned down in his own home by the cops. In the end, this was a horrible prank gone wrong by a gamer who didn't think he could get in any trouble from the safety of his own home. He has since been sentenced to 15 months in prison. However, the police who actually did the shooting never got in trouble. A lawsuit filed by the deceased family against the city of Wichita is still pending.
Nine, spider bite. Henry Moffat was watching the football game at a friend's house, carrying on as normal, when he was shocked by circumstances that almost led to his last day alive. Moffat reached into a fruit bowl to grab himself a banana and felt a sharp prick on his left hand. Within seconds, his hand was numb. On closer inspection, he noticed that there was a black dot with a white ring at the bite site. At first, he didn't think much of it and thought that eventually the numbness would wear off. But by the time he headed home, he started experiencing flu-like symptoms. His flatmate, Travis, heard screams of anguish coming from Henry's locked room. After not receiving any response to several frantic knocks, Travis broke in and found Henry holding his left hand. He was pale and profusely sweating. Travis immediately took him to the hospital. On the way, Henry went into a state of hyperpyrexia, which is an extreme and steep rise in the body's temperature. At one point, his temperature was 109. After hours of medical attention and a quick surgery to clean out the wound, Moffat finally regained consciousness. It was later found that he was bitten by a female brown recluse spider, which is a close cousin to the black widow. The venom not only killed his skin, but was also shutting down all his other organs. In the end, he needed 4 different surgeries, a skin graft from his thigh, and 6 months of healing. Good thing his friend took him to the hospital when he did. If he wasn't there, Henry Moffat would surely be dead. As for the friend's place, it was thoroughly fumigated after a session of deep cleaning. Hopefully there's no more deadly spiders lurking about. 8. Bugs Fiasco. You've probably heard the phrase, "Good night, don't let the bedbugs bite." It's a good habit to regularly strip your bedding apart and check every layer for creepy crawlers, which is exactly what travel blogger Summer Hull does when she travels. But apparently she didn't inspect one of the hotel beds well enough. Hull was on vacation with her 2 beautiful daughters when she noticed that she had some annoyingly itchy bites around her leg. At first she assumed that she had an allergic reaction to something. The family flew back home, unpacked their bags, and washed their dirty laundry as always. A few days later, Summer realized that the bites on her legs weren't going away. She quickly researched bedbugs online and was able to connect the dots. She and her daughters had brought home a few unwanted guests from their vacation. Disgusting, biting, blood-sucking bedbugs crawled into the family's luggage. In no time, she was ready with propane-powered heaters and all kinds of devices to eradicate the bedbugs. Everything from the house had to be moved around to avoid the heat from the heaters. It was chaotic the first time around. A few of the eggs and bugs were missing, so they had to redo the whole process all over again. Their family had to keep moving between hotel rooms while the bugs were being flushed out. Hull claims she spent over $5,000 just to get rid of the bugs, which was more than she had spent on her whole trip. Talk about unpleasant things. Yuck. 7. Eyeworms. You may have heard of earworms, but how about eyeworms? In February 2012, a 26-year-old outdoorsy woman from Oregon felt some sort of irritant in her eyes. She brushed it off, assuming it was just hair or dust, but the irritation continued. After about a week of constantly rubbing her eyes, she pulled out a worm. Yes, the woman had a worm crawling around in her eye. She immediately went to see a local doctor. She and the doctor were both shocked when he pulled 2 more worms from her eye. The next day, she went to an optometrist who found another 3 worms. Can you imagine? None of the doctors had ever seen this before. The poor woman became the first human ever infected by a type of eyeworm previously only seen in cattle. Richard Bradbury, team lead of the Parasitology Reference Diagnostic Laboratory at the CDC's Division of Parasitic Diseases and Malaria, said a total of 14 worms were removed from her left eye over 20 days. They weren't able to remove them all at once. They had to remove them as they became present and visible. They were reported to be half an inch long and would come out into the surface of the eye by themselves. Can you imagine? Lab investigations found the worm to be Thalassia gallosa, which might cause eye irritation but is apparently harmless. All the worm does is crawl under the eyelid and feast on your tears, if that's some relief. But how does the worm reach your eyes? The larvae, or eggs of the worms, are carried by fleas that tend to deposit them on any exposed body surface. Although there are other worms that can be seen in the human eye, this was the first time they found the Thalassia gallosa in the last 20 years. Judging by the woman's lifestyle, they suspect that she may have contracted it while horseback riding. Though all the worms were flushed out, this incident won't be forgotten for long. 6. Fire ant death. We have come across ants of different sizes, shapes, and colors. We probably have squished a few unknowingly and more or less have considered them to be harmless. But have you ever heard of anyone dying from an ant bite? Well, here is a case from North California. Floyd Edward passed away due to an allergic reaction that he had following a bite from fire ants. September 28, 2018 was just an ordinary day when Floyd and his brother Curtis decided to clear out the trailer of his 45-acre property. While they were clearing, Floyd complained to his brother that something was stuck in his throat. Assuming it to be dust, his brother suggested drinking some water to drown the lump into his stomach. After a few sips of water, Floyd did feel better. They went about their work, and after a long day, when they got back home, Floyd complained of the lump in his throat again. But this time he was struggling to breathe. His brother quickly made him relax on the recliner and asked him to concentrate on breathing while he rang the paramedics. When the medics arrived, he was given 2 shots of EpiPen and Benadryl to dissolve the lump, but it was all in vain. He was rushed to the hospital, but they couldn't make it in time. The medical report declared him to have had an anaphylactic shock triggered by a severe allergic reaction to fire ants. Curtis later said that considering that they work in the fields all day, there is no telling how many times he would have gotten bitten by the fire ants. 5. From tumor to worm. The very mention of a tumor can trigger a wave of emotions in anyone. But can you imagine the plight of one woman who went to the hospital to have a tumor removed, only to realize that it was a worm? New Yorker Rachel Palma had been experiencing increasing episodes of hallucinations, clumsiness, and trouble in speech. A thorough medical checkup and a brain scan revealed that there was a marble-sized tumor in her brain. While dissecting through the brain tissues during the surgery, the tumor appeared to be like a small cocoon-like firm lesion, which was ovoid in shape. As per protocol, when they collected the sample of the lesion and looked under a microscope, the tapeworm revealed itself. When the doctors broke the news to Palma, she was obviously relieved that it wasn't brain cancer, but was also taken aback by the grossness of having a worm crawling around her brain. Palma was diagnosed with neurocysticercosis, a parasitic infection of the brain which occurs if one swallows the eggs of a tapeworm. possibly from undercooked pork. It is known to cause seizures or worse, even death. The only way you can prevent a worm infection is by washing your hands prior to meals and by eating well-cooked food. How horrified would you be by discovering there were tapeworm eggs in your brain? Tell us your horrifying, creepy-crawly stories in the comments. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. 4. Allergic to bugs. In July 2019, 77-year-old Evelyn Wooten from Virginia and her friend Karen Hutchins were enjoying a casual stroll along the Riverwalk Trail at Danville. While the two friends were soaking in the environment and sharing a few good laughs, Evelyn asked Hutchins to swat a bug off her shoulder. Karen knocked the bug off and the two continued to walk on. 10 minutes went by, and suddenly Evelyn was having some difficulty breathing. Evelyn understood she required help immediately, and she asked her friend to call 911 before it was too late. She was struggling to even say a few words because she was swelling up and turning blue everywhere, including her lips and the affected arm. In no time, her face went pale and she collapsed. Unfortunately, well before the ambulance could turn up, she had lost consciousness and passed away. The doctor confirmed that it was an allergic reaction to a bug bite. Ironically, the bug that killed the poor lady is called the kissing bug, or the triatomine bug. The bug is commonly found in the holes of houses, under the porch, and creases of rock structures, among many other places. The most poisonous part of the bug is its saliva. The symptoms of these bug bites are similar to any other allergic reaction that leads to redness, itching, and hives. Next time, stay clear of these creepy little bugs. You never know which ones are deadly. 3. Victoria's Secret model. In 2016, Brazilian model Sabrina Hales St. Pierre was all set to walk the ramp for a scheduled event at the Hilton Suites in Palm Desert, California. But she had to back out at the last minute because of the most unexpected reason: bed bugs. The lawsuit that was filed in Riverside County Superior Court claims that the model had a severe reaction to a bed bug bite that caused her to have pain, discomfort, and emotional distress, which in turn compelled her to cancel her walk at the show. The model's lawyer, Brian Virang, mentioned that his client had noticed the bites briefly after checking in. With time, the bites gradually spread to cover most of her body. For a high-profile model like Sabrina, who is signed with a New York City-based agency and who has walked for big fashion brands like Versace and Victoria's Secret, her profession is driven by appearance, and to miss a show as a result of the bedbug bites did not sit well with her. She hopes to recover monetary compensation for the damages to her body and profession as a result of her lawsuit. The general manager of the hotel denied all the accusations and said that the management had relocated the model to a different room as soon as a complaint was raised, and that they tried to make her stay as comfortable as possible. He added that a third-party pest control team was called upon to inspect the two rooms that the model was in, but there was no sign of bedbug infestation found. So was the model allergic to something else? Or is the hotel trying to cover up their mess? What do you think? 2. Undetected tick bite. People are allergic to different things, and then there are people who are allergic to everything. Meet 29-year-old Summer Carroll, who is practically allergic to almost everything. Can you imagine a tiny tick bite that could lead to something as serious as Rocky Mountain spotted fever? Life was normal till Carol was bitten by a tick that sparked off a chain of reactions in her body. What started off initially as a bite led to a bacterial disease that almost looks like a typical rash. The symptoms of the disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, include increased body temperature, headache, and muscle aches. The rash may appear to be blackened or have crusted skin around the site of the tick bite. The disease has a notorious progression of converting into a mast cell activation syndrome. That's when patients experience anaphylaxis, or a sudden and drastic reaction to any allergy. The symptoms at this stage can range from hives, swelling, low blood pressure, difficulty in breathing, and severe diarrhea. This condition weakens the body's immunity, and today Carol is allergic to almost everything around her. Her body can experience allergic reactions to perfumes, foods, and other environmental factors. At one point, her condition was so severe that it made her feel malnourished to the point that she wasn't even able to move or hold herself up. Today, she is well aware of what type of food she can eat and what surroundings keep her safe. 1. Tick bites create bizarre disease for 2. Insect bites may seem tiny and common, but after listening to all these stories, it's hardly a surprise that they can have devastating results. Unfortunately for Katie Strotsum, a tick bite turned out to be a massive surprise for her. Katie loved to ride horses. Her routine at night was to remove the ticks on her before going to bed. She discovered that an arachnid bit her, but she just brushed it off and went on with her life. But this tick bite was like no other. The 14-year-old girl soon had a small bump that developed on the back of her neck. When she came back from a competition, she complained to her mom, a registered nurse, who ignored the swelling, assuming it to be an infected hair follicle. Finally, they went to a doctor who diagnosed it as mononucleosis and Lyme disease. They sent her home with some antibiotics, hoping to cure her in a few days. But her condition only got worse. She developed an extremely high fever, and she wasn't even able to walk. They took her to the hospital again and did a biopsy, and that is when she was found to have tularemia, a rare disease. Tularemia, or rabbit fever, is caused by a bacteria called Francisella tularensis. People who come in contact with this bacteria can experience respiratory distress, life-threatening pneumonia, and other systemic infections. If left untreated, it can also cause death. A similar incident happened with 5-year-old Sammy Prorock. Her parents thought that the girl had chickenpox, but it soon turned out to be Rocky Mountain spotted fever that started off from a tick bite. So now we have enough reason to carry bug repellents wherever we go, and to make extra certain that the bug spray we use is suitable against ticks. Thanks for watching. Have you ever been bit by a creepy crawler? What happened? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.